What happens when a beloved Hollywood icon known for his charm and humor is suddenly pushed to his breaking point on live television? What happens when a father's smile tightens, his posture sharpens, and the entire studio audience feels the shift in the air as he decides, right then, right there, that he's not letting anyone drag his family into the line of fire? Now, let's step right into the fire. The lights were bright that morning, bright enough to force the stage into a kind of shimmering tension even before Ryan Reynolds took his seat. He walked onto the set with his signature easy grin, the kind that usually brought comfort to a room. But today, something about him felt different. He looked relaxed, yet alert, almost as if preparing for an interview he knew might turn sharp at any moment. His hands slid into his pockets before he sat down, a casual gesture, but his eyes were scanning, attentive, reading the studio like a seasoned performer who knew the script wasn't always the one printed on the cue cards. The audience cheered, loud and affectionate, thrilled to see one of Hollywood's most adored stars sitting at the iconic table of The View. Joy Behar leaned forward, complimenting his latest film. Whoopi Goldberg nodded, pleased, leaning back in her chair the way she did when she expected a smooth conversation. Sarah Haynes smiled brightly, ready with one of her warm, friendly questions. And then there was Sunny Hostin, pen in hand, notes up front, posture straight. Focused. Calculating. Waiting. The energy, subtle as it was, shifted the moment Sunny leaned into her microphone. So, Ryan, she began, her tone polite but piercing in a way seasoned viewers knew well. You've always been very public about your career. But lately, people have noticed you're a bit more protective about your family, your wife, your children. Some might say overly protective. A faint murmur rippled through the audience. Ryan's smile flickered. Not gone. He was too trained for that. But there was the smallest tightening at the edges, like someone pulling invisible threads at the corners of his mouth. Sunny continued, tilting her head. I think viewers deserve to understand. Why the sudden shift? Why the secrecy? Especially when your family has become such a topic of discussion in the media. The room fell into a strange kind of hush, a hush that wasn't quiet, but expectant. The air thickened. Cameras zoomed in. Producers leaned closer to their screens backstage. Even Joy Behar shot Sunny a sideways glance, one that silently said, Where are you going with this? Ryan sat back in his chair. He exhaled, slowly. Controlled. Almost too controlled. My family isn't the topic, he said calmly, though the calmness carried a weight. They are my family. Sunny pressed, her voice still collected. Of course. But you know how this works. When you're in the public eye, your choices invite attention. And you and your wife have made choices that, let's be honest, people want to talk about. And some wonder why they can't, all of a sudden. Joy raised her eyebrows, muttering under her breath, oh boy. A few audience members chuckled. But most leaned forward, sensing something was beginning, something potent and personal. Ryan's fingers drummed against the table for a brief second. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it was the first outward sign of pressure. I understand curiosity, he answered, his tone shifting, becoming more grounded. But curiosity doesn't give anyone ownership over my children, or over my wife, or over any part of our private life. Sunny didn't blink. But don't you think that withholding too much creates even more curiosity? More questions. More speculation. Speculation. That word hung heavy, like it had weight, and the moment it left her lips, the entire atmosphere seemed to crystallize. Ryan leaned forward. Not aggressively, not rudely, just enough to establish presence. Enough to remind everyone that behind the charming Hollywood persona was a man who had spent years navigating an industry that often tried to strip people down to their most vulnerable pieces. You're right, he said slowly. Speculation does happen. But speculation only becomes a problem when it goes too far. When people start crossing boundaries. When conversations stop being about work or public life and instead become, he paused, choosing the next words carefully, invasive. Sunny tapped her pen against her notepad. And you feel people have been invasive. Ryan didn't immediately respond. Instead, he looked down for a moment, as if pushing down something he didn't want to show. When he finally answered, his voice was quieter, but heavier. Yes, absolutely. The studio reacted with a low, collective gasp. And I'm not going to sit quietly, he continued, while anyone, media, fans, or even a daytime talk show, tries to make my family part of some narrative they never agreed to. Sunny's eyebrows lifted. It wasn't shock. It was the expression of someone who'd hit exactly what they were aiming for. So you're saying, she said, choosing her phrasing deliberately, that it's inappropriate for us, even as journalists, to ask questions about how you raise your family, or how present you are as a father, or how you and your wife navigate fame together. Joy jerked her head towards Sunny. That's not what he said, she clipped quickly. Whoopi leaned forward at last, sensing the embers beginning to glow hotter. Let him speak, Sunny. He actually can answer that himself. Ryan looked between them all. And then he steadied himself, shoulders squared, voice clear. What I'm saying, he replied, is that the love I have for my family is not something I'm going to let anyone pick apart. Not today. Not ever. That was the moment. The moment the air shifted. The audience erupted, not with applause, not with gasps, but with an audible tense that rolled through the studio like distant thunder. Sunny didn't back down. She leaned in further. Then let me rephrase the question, she said, eyes locked on his. Do you think your public image as a perfect family man is something the world should question? Ryan's jaw clenched, just once. Just enough to show the hit landed. And then he answered. But that answer would turn the entire interview into one of the most talked about moments in The View's history. Ryan's jaw clenched, just once, tight enough for the cameras to catch it. Sunny had landed her question like a carefully aimed dart, and she knew it. The audience felt it too. Even the hum of the lights seemed louder in the thickening silence. And then Ryan finally spoke. I don't think anyone should question a parent's love unless they are looking for a headline, he said, voice lower, calmer, but edged with something sharper, something that made even Whoopi slowly straighten in her chair. Sunny crossed her arms. It's not about headlines, Ryan. It's about accountability and authenticity. When celebrities carefully curate the image of a perfect life, viewers start asking whether that image is real. And you. He cut her off. Not rudely. Not loudly. But firmly. Sunny, you've known me for years. You know that everything I put out there is for fun, for entertainment. I joke about parenting because that's how I deal with stress. But not once, he held up a finger. Not once have I asked anyone to believe my life is perfect. I'm a father. I'm a husband. And I'm flawed, like everyone else. A few audience members clapped, uncertain but supportive. Sunny didn't even glance at them. She kept her eyes locked on him. So you're saying the criticism is unfair? I'm saying, Ryan replied, leaning closer, that when journalists, and I use the term loosely, start digging into my marriage, my kids, my parenting, it stops being journalism and starts being voyeurism. A ripple of stunned whispers spread through the crowd. Sarah Haynes's mouth dropped open. Joy slapped her cue cards on the table, muttering, Oh, he's not playing today. Sunny blinked. Just once. A tiny tell. She hadn't expected him to push back this directly. She uncrossed her arms, placing her palms flat on the table. Ryan, let's be clear. No one is digging into your marriage. We're discussing the public perception of your home life. People see a family that looks picture perfect and they want to know. And that's the problem. Ryan interrupted again, more heat beneath his voice now. People think they're entitled to know everything. Every detail. Every conversation. Every moment that's supposed to belong just to us. The studio audience murmured again, louder this time. Sunny raised a brow. But isn't that part of fame? No, Ryan said immediately. That's part of intrusion. The word landed like a hammer. Whoopi finally leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. Can I say something? She asked, her tone cutting through the tension like a blade. Sunny held her breath. Ryan nodded. Whoopi continued. I've been in this business longer than most of the people in this room have been alive. And the one thing I know for certain is this, you can be a public figure without handing over your entire soul to the world. People forget that celebrities are actual human beings. They forget that families didn't sign up for fame just because one person did. Ryan exhaled, grateful. Exactly. Sunny didn't back down. But that's the conversation. Where is the line? You can't post adorable family photos, cute holiday videos, interviews about parenthood, and then complain when people want to know more. Ryan's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with hurt. You think those posts are for the public? He asked, voice tightening. They are for my kids. They are memories. Moments. I share maybe 1% of our lives, and even that is filtered to protect them. But people take that 1% and act like it's a key into everything else. Sunny tapped her pen again. Nobody is asking for everything. Just transparency. Ryan let out a soft, humorless laugh. About what? Bedtime schedules? My kid's school? My wife's medical history? Where exactly does your version of transparency end? Sunny didn't answer. The audience let out another wave of murmurs, this time tinged with discomfort. Joy shot Sunny a warning glance, but Sunny kept her chin lifted, unshaken. Ryan's tone shifted again, quieter now, more vulnerable. Do you have any idea what it feels like, he said, to wake up and see strangers online dissecting your children, judging your marriage, calling your wife names, or questioning whether you're a good parent because you didn't post something for 2 weeks? Sunny softened, not entirely, but a fraction. I understand that's difficult, but conversations about celebrity families aren't usually meant to hurt. Ryan's stare hardened. Intent doesn't erase impact. The line hit the room like a lightning bolt. Even the producers backstage froze. Sunny inhaled deeply. But you are a public figure. And with that comes responsibility, Ryan finished. Yes, I agree. Responsibility to be kind. To be a role model. To not promote hate. To bring joy, if I can. But nowhere in that responsibility list does it say I owe the world access to the people I love. The audience applauded this time, loud, instinctive, and emotional. Whoopi nodded slowly. Sarah mouthed, wow. Joy leaned back, arms crossed, looking at Sunny as if silently asking, are you going to keep going? Sunny did. So, she said, carefully, if protecting your family is your priority, why participate in interviews that often touch your personal life? He didn't hesitate. To correct the narrative, he said plainly. To remind people that we're not characters. That my wife is not a storyline. That my kids are not entertainment. Sunny tilted her head. But don't you think your openness about fatherhood encouraged people to see your family as part of your brand? Ryan froze. Just for a second. Because this was the pressure point. This was the question she'd been circling toward from the start. The audience leaned in so intensely it felt like the air itself shifted forward. Ryan swallowed. My family is not my brand, he said sternly. My career is my career. My family is my home. They are the people I would burn the whole world down to protect if I had to. The room went dead silent. Sunny's voice lowered. Then why does it feel like you're hiding something? Gasps exploded across the audience. Joy slapped her hand over her mouth. Sarah whispered, Sunny, under her breath. Even Whoopi's jaw tightened in immediate disapproval. Ryan didn't move at first. He just stayed at Sunny. Not blinking. Not breathing. Then, slowly, he leaned forward, hands clasped, elbows on the table, eyes locked directly into hers. And the temperature of the room dropped. When you start implying a man is hiding something simply because he protects his family, he said, voice steady and cold, you stop being a journalist, and you start becoming the problem. The audience erupted. Cheers, gasps, shouts, everything mixing into a storm of shocked noise. Whoopi looked ready to intervene. Producers waved frantically behind the cameras. Joy muttered, oh, this is going viral. Sunny didn't flinch. She stared back, unafraid. But Ryan wasn't done. And what he said next would ignite the kind of on-air explosion The View hadn't seen in years. But Ryan wasn't done. Not even close. He inhaled slowly, the way someone does when they are trying to hold themselves together, when anger rises like a wave but dignity demands restraint. The audience sensed it instantly, every breath, every movement. The air was thick enough to touch. Sunny adjusted her cards, but her fingers trembled ever so slightly. She masked it behind a steady expression, but Ryan had already seen the flicker. Everyone had. He leaned in further. You want to know why I protect my family? He said, voice razor-sharp but eerily calm. Because the world has forgotten what boundaries are. And because questions like the ones you keep asking don't come from curiosity, they come from entitlement. And that entitlement is dangerous. Sunny tried to cut in. I'm asking what people at home. No, Ryan said, firm. You're asking what you think will get a reaction. And congratulations, you got one. The audience let out a rolling, echoing woho. Whoopi raised her hand. All right, hold on, Ryan. But Ryan wasn't finished. You want to imply I'm hiding something. His voice dropped even lower, the kind of quiet that forces everyone else to lean closer. What exactly would I be hiding, Sunny? What fantasy are we feeding right now? Sunny lifted her chin. I'm asking what everyone has noticed, the shift in how you present your family. It's a fair question. Ryan stared at her, unblinking. No question is fair when you've already decided the answer. Silence smacked the studio like a sudden gust of cold air. Sunny tightened her posture. I haven't decided anything. But Ryan shook his head. Then why the phrasing? Why the tone? Why the insinuation that if a man wants privacy, there must be something dark behind it? He spread his hands slightly on the table. This is what we do now. We take normal human boundaries and twist them into scandals. We turn healthy protection into cover-ups. We accuse before we understand. Sarah Haynes looked like she was holding her breath, eyes darting anxiously between them. Joy stared at the audience, as if silently commenting on their reactions. Even Whoopi placed a hand on her forehead, rubbing slowly, as if trying to figure out how to reel the moment back in. But Sunny pushed again. You've built your entire persona on being open, funny, relatable. So when you change suddenly, people wonder why. Ryan blinked once, then laughed quietly. Not amused, not entertained, but disbelieving. That's not a persona, he said. That's who I am. Humor is my coping mechanism. It always has been. But being public doesn't mean I owe the world every piece of myself. Sunny countered quickly. But celebrities create parasocial relationships. Ryan's patience snapped clean in half. No, the public creates parasocial relationships. We don't encourage them. We just exist in the spotlight. The audience roared with applause. Sunny didn't move. You do encourage them, she said. Your interviews, your posts, your jokes, they invite the world in. And then suddenly you slam the door shut. People want to know why. Ryan pointed lightly toward her, not aggressively, just making a point. Because inviting someone into your living room doesn't give them the right to sleep in your bed. The audience exploded with shouts, laughter, gasps. It was the kind of line that hit not just the ears but the chest. Joy nearly fell backward in her chair. Sarah covered her mouth. Whoopi whispered, "Oh, my God." Sunny's eyes widened for 1 second, only one, before her composure returned. "Okay," she said, regaining her footing. "Then explain the shift. You used to talk about your kids all the time. Now you refuse. What changed?" Ryan didn't hesitate. "You really want to know?" Sunny nodded. "Yes." The entire studio leaned in with her. Ryan's voice softened in a way that felt heavy, like he was about to confess something he'd been holding for far too long. "My daughter came home crying," he said quietly, "because kids at her school told her she was trending on TikTok." The room stopped. The kind of stop where even the air forgets to move. Ryan continued, each word slow and razor-sharp. She was trending because strangers were making videos about her mannerisms, about her face, about what they thought she would grow up to be, about what kind of person she would become. He paused, swallowing hard. "She's 8 years old." Sunny's gaze faltered. Joy whispered, "Jesus." Ryan's voice cracked, barely, but real. "She asked me why people she's never met were talking about her. And I didn't have a good answer. Because there isn't one." He looked directly at Sunny again. "So I made a choice. I decided no more personal stories. No more cute anecdotes. No more interviews where I talk about bedtime routines or family traditions. Because my daughter's feelings matter more than viewers' curiosity." The audience applauded, loud, emotional, supportive. A few people even stood. Sarah wiped under her eye. Whoopi nodded solemnly. Sunny exhaled slowly. "Ryan, I didn't know that." He nodded. "You didn't. Because it's private. And private means I don't owe it to the world until I decide it's time." Sunny looked down at her papers, suddenly unsure. But the moment of quiet empathy didn't last. Because Sunny, in true Sunny Hostin fashion, tapped her pen again and lifted her eyes. "But don't you think," she said gently but firmly, "that if you had shared this sooner, people would have understood your boundaries better?" The audience groaned. Ryan stared at her in harsh disbelief. "Are you suggesting I should have broken my daughter's trust for public approval?" Sunny shook her head too quickly. "No, I only mean." "Because that's what you're saying," Ryan said, voice rising, not yelling, but shaking with emotion. "You're saying a parent should disclose their child's pain so the world will leave them alone. That's backwards." Sunny tried again, but this time, her voice wavered. "I'm asking whether transparency could prevent confusion." Ryan leaned forward so intensely that the space between them felt electric. Parents don't owe their children's pain to the public. Ever. Not for sympathy. Not for clarity. Not for clicks. Whoopi snapped her fingers in agreement. "Thank you. Exactly." But Ryan wasn't done. He straightened in his seat, shoulders rising, eyes burning. And if anyone thinks I'm hiding something because I refuse to offer my daughter's tears to strangers online, that says more about them than it does about me. The audience roared, cheers, applause, shouts of support. The studio shook. Sunny sat back, not defeated, but visibly rattled. She wasn't expecting the emotional weight. She wasn't expecting the father, not the movie star. Whoopi raised a hand again, trying to regain control. We need to. But before she could finish, Sunny leaned forward once more, voice unexpectedly soft. Ryan, are you saying your family has been harmed by fame? His eyes dropped, for the first time, and the quiet that followed felt like the moment before a dam breaks. He lifted his head. Yes, he said, and I'm not letting it happen again. A hush fell, a hush that felt dangerous, because the next words from Sunny's mouth, whatever they would be, were going to determine whether the interview calmed, or completely erupted. And Sunny, steadying herself, chose eruption. So if fame has harmed your family, she said, why stay in it? Ryan looked at her like she had just crossed the final line. And then, he answered, and the answer would change everything. Ryan looked at Sunny the way a storm looks at the shoreline, dark, swirling, gathering force. Her question wasn't just sharp, it was personal, almost accusatory. If fame harms your family, why stay in it? The studio froze. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate, their small indicator lights blinking like they weren't sure they should keep recording. Ryan leaned back, then forward, then finally settled with both hands clasped tightly, knuckles whitening. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. The silence itself trembled around him. You want to know why I stay, he said finally, his tone quiet but thunderous in its intensity. Because walking away from my work doesn't make the world safer for my family. Fame doesn't create cruelty, people do. A wave of awe rolled through the audience. Ryan continued, eyes locked on Sunny. Leaving Hollywood won't stop strangers from speculating. It won't stop tabloids from printing garbage. It won't stop social media from dissecting my family like some kind of public puzzle. If anything, disappearing would make them more obsessed. People chase mystery. Sunny opened her mouth, but Ryan held up a hand, not dismissive, just firm enough to reclaim the moment. I stay, he said, because my work gives me a platform to actually speak out about this. Because I can show my kids that you don't run from things that scare you. You draw your own boundaries and defend them. Whoopi nodded slowly, deeply. That's actually a hell of a point. Ryan didn't look away from Sunny. And I stay because my family loves what I do. They are proud of me. My daughters laugh at my movies. They draw Deadpool masks on their homework. My wife is the strongest, brightest person I know, and she reminds me every day that quitting doesn't fix a broken system. The audience applauded, heartfelt and loud. Sunny swallowed. So you're saying the problem is the public, not fame itself? Ryan tilted his head, considering. I'm saying the problem is the lack of compassion, the lack of boundaries, the obsession with tearing people down or digging into their lives just because they are visible. He leaned in again, but this time his voice softened, the fire dimming into something more vulnerable. Fame didn't harm my family. The world's behavior did. A hush swept over the room, heavy as midnight. And that's why I stay, Ryan said. So I can keep telling the world what's not okay. So maybe my kids won't have to. Sunny looked down at her notes, really looked, like she was finally realizing how far the conversation had spiraled beyond her original intention. Or perhaps she knew all along where she was steering it, and now wasn't entirely sure how to steer it back. But she lifted her gaze again. And she wasn't done. So, Ryan, what would you say to people who believe that when celebrities ask for privacy, it comes off as hypocrisy? The audience booed lightly. They didn't like that one. Ryan didn't flinch. Hypocrisy, he repeated, tasting the word. That's a strong accusation. Let's break it down. He lifted a hand, ticking off points with his fingers. 1. Posting a Halloween costume doesn't mean I owe you my kids' medical records. The audience erupted in laughter and applause. 2. Talking about work-life balance doesn't mean I have to expose every moment of my marriage. More applause. And 3, he said, leaning closer again, eyes sharpening. Being famous isn't a contract to surrender your humanity. The crowd cheered louder than before. Sunny's expression shifted, part defiance, part contemplation, part something she didn't want anyone to see. Ryan wasn't attacking anymore. He was teaching. And everyone felt that shift. But here's the part no one wants to admit, he said. People like the idea of celebrity access. They like feeling close to us. They like thinking they know us. And that's fine. That's human. But the second that desire crosses into entitlement, we lose our empathy. Joy snapped her fingers. There it is. Thank you. Sunny finally spoke, her tone noticeably gentler. Ryan, I wasn't trying to attack your family. He nodded. I know, but intent doesn't erase impact. You're a powerful voice. When you suggest a parent is hiding something simply because they are protecting their children, people listen. They run with it, and those narratives take on a life of their own. Sunny breathed out slowly. You're right. The admission surprised everyone, including Ryan. But before the tension could settle, a voice in the audience suddenly called out. We love you, Ryan. The crowd burst into laughter and applause. Even Ryan cracked a genuine smile as he glanced toward the audience section. Love you too, he said with a small wave. Whoopi seized the moment. All right, she said, leaning forward. Before we all need therapy after this conversation. The audience laughed again. She continued. Let me just say something. This show has big personalities. Big opinions. And sometimes, yes, we push too far. But I think this moment right here is exactly why conversations like this matter. Ryan nodded appreciatively. Sunny cleared her throat. I want to ask you one last thing, if I may. The audience quieted again. Of everything fame has brought you, she said. Good and bad, what do you want your children to remember when they are older? Ryan froze, not out of defensiveness, but from the emotional weight of the question. He inhaled deeply. Then he answered. I want them to remember that I fought for them. That I didn't care what headlines said. That I didn't bend because the world demanded access. That I chose them, every time, every moment, every decision. His voice thickened. I want them to see that even in a world obsessed with exposure, their dad protected what mattered. The room erupted. Cheers, applause, a standing ovation in several sections. Even Sunny clapped, quietly but sincerely. Whoopi gave a slow, approving nod. All right. Okay. That's a beautiful place to end this. But the moment wasn't over. Because the aftermath hit instantly. Backstage producers rushed around, phones buzzing non-stop. Clips from the interview were already trending online, before the segment even ended. Hashtags flew across social media. Viewers debated every word. Some praised Ryan's honesty. Some argued Sunny's questioning. Some called it the most emotional interview The View had aired in years. And as the cameras began to fade out, Ryan exhaled deeply, like a man who had emptied months of weight onto the table. He reached for his water, took a sip, and offered Sunny a small nod. Not triumphant, not bitter, just human. Sunny nodded back. Respect. Uneasy, but real. The lights dimmed as the audience continued buzzing, whispering, analyzing, replaying the confrontation in their minds. Something big had just happened. Something raw, unfiltered, unforgettable. And as the broadcast ended, the final image of Ryan Reynolds on The View wasn't a smile or a joke. It was a father, defending his family with every word he had. Now it's your turn. What do you think about everything that happened? Who was right? Who crossed the line? Whose side are you on? Tell us in the comments right now. We read every one. And if you want more explosive celebrity confrontations, emotional showdowns, and cinematic storytelling like this, make sure you subscribe to Talk Narrative and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what's coming next.